Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Today, our show actually, is a celebration of the 21st annual Blackjack Ball. And we have lots of pretty impressive folks here to talk about it. First, we have Max Rubin, who's been hosting these balls for 21 years. And maybe this was his last one. We have newly elected Blackjack Hall of Fame member, Don Johnson. And we have the winner of this year's Gross Gene Cup, Anthony Curtis. Richard Munchkin, who's disqualified from competing in the competition because he won the competition 3 times. He's also here, as he is every week. And I'm here as the undisputed best square dancer in the whole damn studio.
That's really impressive, being the best square dancer. How can you even admit that in public on radio, for God's sake?
All right. That curmudgeon is Max Rubin, and we're going to start with him.
Well, let me take off my fishnets and no, that's all right.
Okay, Max, you've done this 21 years in a row.
I have.
This year's event included Ed Thorpe, the intellectual godfather of all card counters. It included a musical duet featuring your daughter, Megan Reardon, and Hall of Famer Darryl Purpose singing an Oscar-winning song, which Megan sang every night as the female lead in the Dublin production of Once the Musical. Pretty special evening. Did a hell of a job, especially since you're facing considerable health issues. It's been said that the 21st Blackjack Ball may be the last one you host. Any truth to that?
Probably there is some truth to that. I put in over 25 straight hours, and it broke my clock. I still can't sleep. I get up at 2 in the morning, and then I take a nap, and my circadian rhythms are dead. And the last time that happened to me was about 6 years ago with one person who's not with us today, but we were stuck, and we don't leave when we're stuck. And we played about 30 hours, and it broke my clock for about 3 months. And this one, my clock's still broken. And when Don was coming by to get me today, it was 1 o'clock, and I was still asleep because I was up at 2 this morning. And I don't know if I can take it at my age, all the work it takes to get this damn thing done. So I'm trying to hand it off to Richard Munchkin and let him do the invitations and deciding who gets to come and who doesn't. And that is not a fun chore because so many people feel that they are more qualified and deserving and should be coming to my party because they're better than the rest of the people to come to my social event. And then when I tell them they can kiss off, it doesn't go over well. So that part is not a fun part of my life. But other than that, I love the night of the ball. It's a great thing to be popular one night of your life, once a year. The rest of it is not enjoyable anymore.
Now, if Richard was the host and you were like the host emeritus, so to speak, would Verona still be willing to sponsor, do you think?
I'm pretty sure they would.
Well,
sure. Why wouldn't they? I mean, it's such a great concept to have the Blackjack Hall of Fame in a casino. And the deal is, if you're in the Blackjack Hall of Fame, you're room, food, beverage, golf, unlimited for life. To not play blackjack there, that's a pretty good deal for Verona and a pretty good deal for the people that are in the Blackjack Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it definitely is a good deal for Verona. They've saved an enormous amount of money by asking the people who come to the ball not to play there.
Plus, each year's winner has the 1 year to come down and come to Verona, and you get to come stay and do whatever you like for a year because you are that year's champion. So that's a great deal. And,
does anyone ever do it?
Oh yeah, well, there's some that will ask me, and when you heard their names, it wouldn't shock you, but they will call me on Friday at 4 and say, we'd like to check in at 4:35 with the kids.
I used to go down there when my son was living in San Diego. I used to go down there quite often. Yeah, so I've certainly
a lot.
Yeah, I came down there quite a bit.
And what's great is he gets to speak with casino people, and they get to speak with him, and there's no harm, no foul because he's not going to play there. And they get to talk to him, and they go, wow, I got to meet Munchkin. That's so cool. He doesn't look anything like that picture on the wall. Yeah, how's that?
Imagine that.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting makeup on those pictures on the wall, and sometimes it may not even be the exact person, but that's kind of the way it goes.
Well, John Chang is the exact person, only it's a picture of him when he's a small boy.
Yes.
All right.
And he's been there a lot.
Okay, let's talk to Don Johnson. Most recent inductee into the Blackjack Hall of Fame. You've been on the ballot for a few years now and finally popped through. You're linked with some pretty special individuals. How does that feel?
Yeah, as I said in my inductee speech, I mean, what an honor to be included with some of the minds and the people that are in the Hall of Fame currently, and people that were on the ballot, also very deserving to be in the Hall of Fame. So, I took some pointers from Trump on the campaign trail and paid off. I didn't have to go to the Twitter, but
he didn't take him from Trump. He took him from me, and I told him if he wanted to win, to start doing some Trump maneuvers and pick his spots and start working the absentee ballots and start working the crowds he could win, because there are a lot of people he was not going to win over because the older people knew the older people on that ballot, and that's where I saw the votes coming in, and, everybody, I told them where they stood, what was going on, and Don was very smart, got a lot of casino player magazines there with his picture on them, placed them around on the tables. Now, he was also pretty gutsy because he had a 3-liter bottle.
Six.
Good God.
It's 3 liters.
Bottle.
It's 3 liters now because the valet at the Hard Rock snapped the neck off after the ball.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, he did. Snapped it, pushed a button, and the neck snapped off. But it was already engraved. Don Johnson, inductee, Blackjack Hall of Fame. And it was already made. And he wasn't winning the absentee ballots. And I said, this is taking a lot of guts, because I'm really looking forward to taking a magic marker and Xing out your name and in tape, putting the name of the real winner on this bottle. So he was starting to sweat bullets. It was pretty fun. And guess what? Don was on the phone about every hour for 2 weeks.
Lobbying.
He didn't need to lobby me, but didn't need to lobby me because it's the Blackjack Hall of Fame, and Don Johnson is the most famous blackjack player in the world.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Since Ken Houston, right? I mean,
right.
It was prior to that. But yeah, I mean, more people have heard of you. And actually, I would say our prior episodes with you are the most downloaded shows that we've had. So there you go. You're in the Gambling with an Edge Hall of Fame, too.
It sounds like that Hard Rock valet guy really screwed up his tip.
I accused him on the way over. He brought us here. I said, you got stiff before that. You did it on purpose, didn't you? And he claims he didn't, but that's BS. He did it on purpose.
Now, I wrote an article in this week's column. The article's about this ball. And in this article, I said Phil Ivey, who I said I thought played a little poker, he crashed the blackjack ball. So, okay, those were the alternate facts. Don, what really happened?
Phil was invited. Hey, I needed the votes.
And
Phil's a personal friend, so I knew I could count on Phil to vote for me, and he wanted to be there. He was actually impressed. He had a good time. He was impressed. It was who wouldn't be impressed when you walk in that room with the minds that are in that room, between Professor Thorpe and people from past and present that are there. It's an amazing group of people. You think about it, you get that many people that are that bright or that smart. And look at the all-star lineup at my table.
yeah, Grosjean was there, and he's not too dumb.
There's actually people in that room, and one gentleman couldn't make it because his wife had just filed for divorce, who's worth $7.8 billion. But there were several people in that room that started off with $200 and a copy of Eb Thorpe's book that are billionaires now. Billions. Some pretty smart people in that room.
Oh, without a doubt. But on Phil Ivey, there was a lot of the feeling going back the other direction. There's a lot of the people in that room who are kind of in awe of Phil Ivey for lots of reasons, too. So he was in awe of the people in the room, and we were in awe of him. So
I've got a very simple thing on the invitations. You must have your guest vetted, and I have to approve them, and 90% of them are not approved because somebody wants to come. No, occasionally, if I happen to know the people, they can bring a date or a wife. And like Bob, you've come and you weren't allowed to bring your wife on a number of occasions. This year, I said, because this is the 21st, you've helped me a lot. You've introduced questions and whatnot, that your wife got to come. And evidently she had a pretty good time.
She had a great time. She said this will be her last time. It was like I was busy talking shop, and she talked to Nelia, who was Richard's wife, and they would rather talk to each other than talk to anybody else in the room. So
well, that's the problem whenever you get a whole group of gamblers together, is they all want to talk about gambling, and the wives are all like, they think we're a bunch of nerds, and they're bored out of their mind a lot of times. So
they're half right, but he gives me a call at the last minute and says, I can get Phil Ivey. And I'd had requests for a lot of people that are semi-famous, infamous, everything in between. And he said, Phil Ivey would like to come to the party. Well, Phil Ivey is one of those people that the answer is
going to be yes.
It's just yes. If Jack Binion wanted to come because he's no longer in the business, Jack Binion's going to get in the door, because Jack Binion had done some remarkable things in the world of blackjack. He really has. So Phil Ivey got to come, and it was a crash, but it was a legitimate crash, and he had a pretty good time, too. And poker never has had anything like this for the poker people. No. Not sure they ever would either, but...
Well, but they've had their own kind of parties that are legendary.
They have had some gamblers' parties that are pretty remarkable.
Mr. Johnson has participated in a few of those, I suspect. All right, let's talk to Anthony Curtis. Winner of the Blackjack Ball, no longer a bridesmaid, finally made it. How's it feel?
Well, it's, monkey off the back, I guess. I got a lot of calls from a lot of people, a lot of emails, and the word monkey was in, and back was in just about every one of those. So, I've been doing it. I've been coming since the first one. I think I missed one when I was out of town. I had some sort of business, and I've had a lot of cracks at it. I think I've been second.
You were there the very first year.
I was second the very first year. Yeah. The very first year, I was the final two were me and Wally. And Wally won, and then I was second to you once or twice, and I was second to Grosjean once or twice, and I was second to Mike Shackelford one year. And I mean, two of those times it came down to me and him, and it was a tournament thing. So theoretically, I'm supposed to have an edge in the tournament, and twice I was drawn dead. I mean, it just didn't seem like that was ever going to happen. And then bingo. So yeah, it feels pretty good. It's like I didn't have a big old party by myself, but it felt good.
Well, you do have a big old bottle of Luc Belaire Rare Rosé. What are you going to do with that?
Yeah, I've got the Grosjean Cup over the last 2 years. The award that you get for winning it is Nebuchadnezzar, they call it, right? Of champagne, which is the equivalent of 20 real bottles of champagne. So I've got 20 bottles of champagne all wrapped up in one package. And I'm looking for a party. You heard Dana White looking for a fight, right? It's Anthony Curtis looking for a party.
So
that's my one regret about, for the last few years, I've said I actually like the fact that I can't compete because I get to go talk to people. In years past, a lot of times there were people I didn't get to talk to because I was busy, competing and
winning the
competition. But the one thing I miss is, I would have loved to have one of those giant bottles of champagne, which I wouldn't even drink, but it'd be nice to have the bottle. You know what I mean?
When I saw it last year, I said, I think I'm going to try now. See that?
And I imagine Don could arrange to have one of those made for you if you wanted to pay retail. What do you figure one of those to go for, Don?
I don't know. I think, I know what they cost in a nightclub. If you were to go to Excess or one of the big clubs here, probably around 20,000, 25,000.
No problem for Munchkin.
Yeah, plus an auto grat to 7,000 on top of that.
The auto what?
The auto grat, auto gratuity.
I see.
You don't get to decide whether or not you had good service. They just automatically tack it on.
Autograt, that's a good one.
It's a new word for me, autograt.
So I've got a theoretically
too, right? Yeah.
Theoretically, I have a $32,000 trophy.
So now, if any of our listeners are gracious enough to want to help you get rid of that champagne, how do you recommend they get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Well, we got this building over behind the Rio that I guess anybody could show up and say I'm ready to party, right? I ain't sure it's going to happen, but I mean, what the heck?
But they can come and say it.
Sure.
Now, the final question. it was down to you and David Spence. The two of you had to count down a well-shuffled double deck from which Max had removed one card and set it on the felt right in front of you. You had to count the cards and tell Max whether the card removed was high, low, or neutral. But it wasn't whatever the second place guy decided was irrelevant. It was all up to the first place guy. The fastest guy, if he got it right, he was the champion. If he got it wrong, the other guy was the champion. What was your strategy?
Well, in this tournament, it's a contest. It's a tournament, and you have to make some decisions about how you want to play it. So I kind of made an assessment going in. I wasn't sure who could count down the two decks faster. I haven't done this for a long time. I haven't really been allowed to play blackjack for probably going on over a decade now. So I don't practice much. Now, when I was doing it, I was real fast. I mean, I was extremely fast. I use a 3-level count, and I could pick up the deck and start a stopwatch and put it down and be right 9 times out of 10 in 12 seconds. That's fast. And I mean, but that's a long time ago. So before the ball, I screwed around a little bit with a couple decks of cards, and I was like, I sucked. I was just like, wow, this is not good. So we get down. Once I got there, for some reason, I must admit, the adrenaline pumped in, and we counted a single deck, and I felt very fast and very on top of it. So I knew I was able to count it, but I still wasn't sure. This is a guy I was playing against who's been in the trenches recently. So here's the thing: the count I use happens to have more low cards than high cards, and neither. Neutral, yeah, and basically 28 to 24. So I know that if I just guess, I've got a 7 to 6 edge. So the idea was I would count as fast as I could and keep an eye on him out of the corner of my eye. And if it looked like he was going to slap before me, I'd beat him to the table. That was my plan. And I screwed that up. And we got down. We were very, very close to the end. And I was like, wow, I can get through this, and I'll still beat him. And he beat me by a fraction of a second.
Fraction, yeah. You guys came down at
it was too close for me to call, and I was watching for it.
I saw him move, and I went for it. And he just moved fast, and he beat me to the table. I mean, it was almost imperceptible, but I knew he beat me to the table. But I was so close. I was so close to the end. I was pretty sure what my card was anyway, and I was like, well, hopefully I put enough pressure on him to have him make a mistake, and he did. He missed it.
So now you were the champion.
Let me say, I was willing to. If he was faster than me, I was willing to slap before him and take a 7 to 6 edge.
You were willing to bet that he wouldn't get it wrong.
Yes. I was thinking that it would be wrong. It would be inefficient, wrong to be second. That being first and guessing with a 7 to 6 edge was better than being second.
But I believe that he had exactly the same idea about you. I think that because of the earlier one where you counted only one deck, I think he was not going to get down second.
I beat him. I beat him in the single deck. The only one I didn't beat was John Chang. John was fast. John was real fast, and I was second in that one. So I was pretty confident.
There was a time John could count down a deck in 7 seconds.
Well, 7 beats 12, right?
Boy, really.
By you can look at him. But so many guys take the cards and slap them down and slap them down. John just spreads them, looks at them, and gives you a number, and he's done.
Yeah. I was shocked at how quickly he slapped. Now, I've played with John before, and I've seen him how quick he is, but he seemed even quicker this time. But I beat David fairly handily in the first one, and I beat all the others. So I figured I might be able to beat him to the end, and that might be true. I might have seen him flinch. I might have moved, and he moved, and something like that happened. He might have taken a pure guess. I'm not sure.
I'm almost certain that he did because he had a number of cards remaining in his hand when he hit. I don't think he counted all of his cards.
Well, it's not a bad play. I'm telling you, just from a game, from a game theory standpoint, it's not a bad thing to do. So,
well, from your point of view, he was in high-low. David was in high-low, so it was not a
7 to 6 situation.
Yeah, he was
just
a dog.
Don't pick neutral.
Right.
Yeah,
one way or the other, go high or low is the play. Right.
Yeah.
But so after David announced wrong, you were the champion. So I looked at you and I said, it has no bearing on whether or not you're the champion, but is that card high or low or neutral? You don't have to answer. And you did answer. You said it was low. And we turned it over and it happened to be low.
Right.
So that was You did not have to do that.
Well, let's put it this way. I didn't know for sure, but I had a pretty significant negative count with just a few cards left. And when we did slap, I looked to see what it looked like, and it looked like the right kind of distribution. I was pretty sure it was low. So, I mean, neither one of us apparently got to our last card. I was pretty close. So let's put it this way. If I'd have won on the 7-6 gameplay, I'd have felt a little sheepish. Right now, as it is, I was pretty sure it was low. I feel like I earned it.
But I must say, the guys that came down to the wire, I had cards in a discard rack, and you had 5 seconds to look at them, turn around, and write down how many cards you thought were there.
Right.
The two of them both wrote 134. And there were 135 cards in the discard.
Well, actually, Anthony wrote 136.
Oh, I'm sorry. He was
and David
one
wrote
over.
131, which were
Who
close.
was the other?
Oh,
Somebody else was within
no.
one.
Andy and John both said 124, and they tied.
Yeah.
And so you had your tiebreaker.
Well, I thought we had two that were one away. So
No, the two were tied.
Okay.
And so they had you had an
I was
elimination.
one off, but I mean, when I played, I did a lot of regular counting. Not all of that, but I did a lot of that, and there's a lot of deck estimation there. So that's something that I've done before. Cutting is a little different. I was never one of the designated cutters on the group that I played with. I usually would play the money, and I wasn't a skill guy, so my cut was a pretty good cut. Just which I attribute that a lot to luck.
I have to say this too. In the old days, the skills competition was all kinds of wacky, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's actually skills that are applicable to blackjack players. But on the other hand, it allows people now to practice, which you really couldn't do before because you didn't know what the competitions were going to be.
Well,
it does, and I thought it was a lot more fun in those days. I had 10 events, but it was chip shuffling, and just because we had arm wrestling, or we would have this,
and
feats of
golf
strength
putting
and putting and this and that. But it took so long.
Yeah.
And when we had it at my home, it was fine, but we have to be out of that clubhouse by 11 o'clock. So I cut it down. 5 events, boom.
Yeah, well, in the old days, it was all things that gamblers did, so it made sense. They played golf, and the rationale behind arm wrestling was, well, if you got to deal with a security guard, and, they all had there were reasons for these things, but it wasn't as pure kind of as it is now. I mean, we're cutting and counting and estimating, and it's pretty serious competition at this time now.
Yeah.
But it's always been pretty serious just to win that trophy. And
For sure.
That means a lot. And one of my favorite moves of all time was we used to have pitching cards, and you had to pitch it into a spittoon, and we'd start it off about 20 feet away and then bring it in a couple feet, and you'd have to pitch a card into a spittoon, first one in, and then a friend of ours,
Diamond Mike.
it was Diamond Mike, took the card and rolled it into a ball and shot it like a basketball. Good for 2. He wins that part of the competition and moved on down the line too.
Now the first year that I had that, which I think was much earlier, I threw the entire deck, and you actually disallowed my throw, and I had to go back and throw them one by one. So
that's a good one. That's a good move.
But it does say
it
pitch
didn't fly.
a card.
I didn't get away with it.
Well, it's like I said earlier. There's a lot of game technique involved. There always has been, and there even was in this one, where you're thinking sort of beyond just the skill. It's like what makes the most sense at this time. And so, you had an idea like that, and you won it 3 times. And Diamond Mike had an idea like he did, and he won it twice, if you recall. He was back to back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into winning this contest. So yeah, it's a kind of a feather in the cap to have won it. Yeah, sure, I feel good about it.
And everybody that's ever won this thing or come close. Bob actually got to the finals table because he does well in the competition because he reads every book and has the shows. So I dig a lot of my information out on a lot of the electronic issues, and he stacks the deck. He does, but he gets picked off. But anybody who's ever won this, it's not just card counting.
No.
And it's other skills, because just garden variety card counters, they don't win. They always have. I always throw in a few other skills that are necessary to be a well-rounded pro. But there's never been a person at that finals table that wasn't a world-class professional player. No, not ever. Now, you may be a video poker player, Bob, but
I would say Thea Sankowitz is not a world-class player.
no, she is not.
She's
a world-class mind.
She
but
is.
Yes.
She's Bob
So she
Nersessian's
did well on the question part.
wife
yes.
and lawyer partner, and she got to the final. And like me, she blew out in the first one.
Yes.
Question for Don. That's kind of a follow-up on what Anthony said. Anthony mentioned he hasn't really been able to play blackjack in 10 years. You're the most famous blackjack player around. You must be running out of games to play. How do you deal with that?
I just try to have some fun now. I mean, I'm not. You're not going to see a stretch where anybody's going to. Not at my level. You're not going to see a stretch where the casino's going to let you play 100,000 a hand. They're not that naive.
You mentioned in your speech when you got it that if you want to continue playing blackjack, it's probably best not to make a documentary on CNBC about it. So, do you have any regrets about that?
No, I don't. I don't have any regrets about doing any of it, and especially not filming the documentary. It was fun.
So you're okay with that $15 million year
Yeah, I'm all right.
that you won all that money? Yeah. Well, okay. I guess a lot of guys would
It's
take
some
one
compensation
for the team.
anyway.
Yeah,
I can live with it.
I guess. All right, there's these questions to get to it. Question I enjoyed most this year, it was typical Blackjack Ball questions. I missed it. It was about Quatloos. Now, Max, do you have the Quatloo question with you? And if so, will you read it, please?
I do have it. And that was question number 8. If you're wagering in Quatloos, that's Quatloos, you're most likely betting on A, the over-under blackjack side bet in Cambodia, B, the over-under blackjack side bet in Poland, C, hand-to-hand combat between Captain Kirk's crew and the thralls, D, an online poker tournament where Quatloo credits are used to skirt U.S. regulations on live money games.
Don Johnson, did you get that right?
No, I've never even heard of a Quatloo.
Anthony Curtis, did you get that right?
I got that right before he gave the questions. I mean, the answers. I knew it as soon as he said Quatloos. I knew where it was.
You knew it was something to do with Scar Trek.
Absolutely, I
So-
knew it was, and all I did was sit there and say, all I got to hear is Captain Kirk or Spock or whatever, and that's my answer.
And what's interesting is this was a question written by James Grosjean. And he put in his notes that he bet that Dr. Ed Thorpe would get that right because that was from his era. And so the answer was, in the Star Trek episode, the gamesters of Triskelion, the disembodied brains want to make big wagers in Quatloos on whether Kirk's team can win in the ring before Kirk proposes even higher stakes. Therefore, the answer to A is C, hand-to-hand combat between Captain Kirk's crew and the thralls. James Grosjean predicted that Ed Thorpe would get it. Why? Get it right. Why? He probably watched Star Trek and likely knows that the currency in Cambodia and Poland are not Quatloos either.
So did anybody ask Ed if he got that question
We
right?
did ask him. Max asked him at the ball.
Yeah.
Out loud, and Ed shook his head. No, not me.
Well, here's what's interesting about that is that when I started getting interested in gambling, I was in 10th grade. And that was a little after Star Trek was playing, but I used to watch Star Trek, and then I used to watch all of the episodes when they would replay them. And I was fascinated by that particular one because I was into gambling. I was reading every book I could find on gambling, and this was in the 70s. And these were like brains. They were just brains that wanted to bet on everything. It was like everything in their life nothing had any value to them anymore except wagering. I was like, man, it makes sense to me.
My kind of guys, huh? All right.
Wow, we're thralls. I never knew that. We're all thralls, right? Oh, yeah. Thralls.
No, I like square dancing too. I must not be a thrall. Okay, so we have to do a few commercials, and after we come back, we're going to go around the room and each of us talk about some of our favorite things that happened in the 21 Blackjack Balls. It can be this one, but it didn't involve you winning anything because everybody's favorite time is when they won. But some of the other times. All right. South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anybody else has. All February, there'll be a Money Madness jackpot going on at all time. The major jackpot starts at $10,000 and must be hit by $25,000. All players playing with a card on any machine are eligible to win so long as they've played at least $1.25 in the past minute. You get $25 of free play if it goes off and somebody else was the winner. Smaller jackpot runs between $1,000 and $2,500 and is expected to hit about 3 times a day. There will be double points on all video poker machines on President's Day, Monday, February 20th, midnight to midnight, no limits. The 4th class in the current 10-week semester of free video poker classes will be on Wednesday, February 15th at noon in the Silverado Lounge. This lounge is right outside Don Vito's Italian restaurant. The class is 9-6 Jacks or Better Multi-Strike. Multi-Strike is a 4-line game where you pay in advance for all 4 lines. If you do not get at least your money back on the first line, you've lost all 4 bets. If you do get your money back, or better, on the bottom line, you get to play the next level up for free at double the stakes. Do it again, play the 3rd line at 4 times the stakes. Win again, you play the top line at 8 times the stakes. In addition to winning your way up, sometimes you randomly receive free rides before you play, which moves you up automatically whether you win this hand or not. The game requires 4 different strategies, depending on which line you're on. Game returns 99.79% because multi-strike feature adds approximately 0.25% to all the base games. The software Video Poker for Winners is the only commercially available software that includes multi-strike and the strategies for all 4 levels. At videopoker.com, it's the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the Gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is 100 Play Video Poker with Super Times Pay. Super Times Pay is a 6 coins per line game where approximately every 15 hands you receive multipliers ranging from 2x to 10x. There are no strategy deviations from the base game, and Super Times Pay also adds about 0.25% to the base game. Video Poker for Winners software is also the only commercially available software that includes this game as well. All right, we are talking with Don Johnson, Max Rubin, and Anthony Curtis about Blackjack Ball. For me, one of my favorite experiences was at the first ball I was invited to. And we were sitting on a floor in Max's house. He'd run out of chairs, so I was sitting on the floor. Other people scored chairs. And Max was basically telling us not to cheat too much at the 21 questions quiz. What he said is, I expect you to cheat a little bit, otherwise I wouldn't respect you. Now that line struck me as irrelevantly hilarious. Now, Max, was that a prepared line, or was it just off the cuff, Max being Max?
That was off the cuff, and it was true. I expect people to be making some moves, and there's advantage plays, and there's outright gouging and cheating, and that has happened too, and that's why I don't allow X'd out answers on the test, because that happened where people were passing their cards back and forth across tables and just filling in the answers and leaving certain spots blank. And I found out about it because a relative of mine was in on it with one of the people that we all know very well, and she was drunk and said, "Do you know what we just did and how he got to the table?" "No, what happened?" "Oh, well, he didn't fill him out. We just wrote him in, and then somebody else marked him for him. And yeah, he's at the final table. Yay." There was some justice there, though, because during the arm wrestling competition, which was left-handed that year, he called it some brute dislocated his shoulder. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Wait, him?
No. You remember when it happened? No. To our friend from Dayton, Nevada?
No, I didn't recall.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yes.
No.
Mr. Filthy?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I remember his arm getting dislocated.
Through his,
Do you want to give any more hints on who this is?
Well, that's as far as I'm going to go. But he wasn't aware they did it either, because they'd marked out some stuff. But so it wasn't really blanks, but they just marked out and wrote in some other names. But he wasn't aware of it until my relative made me aware of it. because she thought it was so funny. And I thought it was funny as well, but I put in the rule after that, and you saw how stringent I was with it this year, and I've had to be over the years. If there's any changes
he
or
took
any
mine.
blanks,
I
took Don's.
I had to cross out. He grabbed it out of my hand.
Don
I
Chang.
took Don's test. I took it away from him.
Oh, because it had a scratch out?
It had a
I had
scratch
a
out.
scratch out on it. He goes, "You can't do that." He grabbed it out of my hand.
That's it.
Yeah, John Chang one year got disqualified.
Yeah.
This year, one of the guys at the final tables actually had a scratch out, and Max overrode his decision
I did.
because of a
Because he misread the question.
because Max made a mistake and
I
kind
did
of
make a mistake.
and kind of drew it in. Now I talk about that in my article.
Because of
It's-
Attorney General Sessions.
yes, yes, it had to do with Max called Sessions Robert Sessions instead of Jeffrey.
Robert and
And
it's Jeff. Right.
And anyway, Don Johnson, what favorite memory do you have of the Blackjack Ball that did not involve you winning the whole thing?
Not so much at the Blackjack Ball, but I get a kick out of every year this happens, and every year when Max starts sending out his emails, and he has to remind everybody, listen, bringing a cheap bottle of champagne to his Blackjack Ball is not an advantage play.
Yeah. Well, what
I
Richard,
die
when
laughing
you're
at home. I read those emails.
brought
I'm
a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine, and I thought Max's head was going to explode.
goes off-
He was
he
like,
goes
"Where
off on
did
these
who brought
guys."
this?"
What's this?
Oh, and this year I had a beauty. Last year, a guy shows up from Florida with a split of $14 champagne. He didn't get invited this year. And one of his friends that's part of that squad from there, and they're good, and you know who they are, emailed me and said, why didn't he get invited? And I said, it just wouldn't be right. It's just not fair to the man. And he
Their
said,
lifetime membership
"What?"
got revoked?
Well, they think there's a lifetime membership, but there aren't. And I said, I have friends I've played with 30 or 40 years. They get to come first. And there are no qualifiers except for this particular person. It wouldn't be fair because he traveled all the way to Las Vegas, and it was so hard on him he couldn't even afford to buy a bottle of champagne, and he wound up bringing a split to the Blackjack Ball. So I'm going to wait 3 or 4 years until he's accumulated a big enough bankroll where he can actually bring a legitimate bottle before he's actually considered for an invitation in the future.
Well, when we, some of the listeners might not know that we actually bet on this, and we buy one another, and there's money to be made, and you can buy yourself back. And so I bought half of myself back, and what I made on this Blackjack Ball, I figured out the other day, probably pays for every bottle of
Dom
that I've brought over 20 years. Yeah, it probably makes me about even.
Yeah, actually, that
And
is
he's
something
bought $3,000 or $4,000 worth of Dom.
we haven't mentioned that. Yeah, there's a Calcutta auction. One of the questions on the test this year was that are Calcutta auctions legal in the state of Nevada, and it turns out they are. So yeah, I bought Anthony Curtis this year, and you bought half yourself back, so we split the first prize money, which was, I think the total was like $7,000 or something.
Yeah, you got a bargain. That's the lowest I have gone for in a decade.
Yeah, well,
that's the lowest price I've gone for in a decade, and the reason for that is because I've been absolutely terrible the last 3 years, right? And so I slipped down, and it was less than half that I'd gone for in some certain times.
And
so you did good.
Really interesting about the Calcuttas is that even a football pool with 100 squares, if you own a bar, you're breaking the law. Gaming can come in and pull your license if they want to, because that's a gambling event. Yet, Calcuttas are okay. And a Calcutta is where you bet on people that are competing against each other in a contest. And that all evolved in the state of Nevada from the Tournament of Champions at the Desert Inn, because all of the players there, they would have Calcutta bet wagering the night before. And you could buy Arnold Palmer. You could buy this person, whomever it may be. They could buy back half of themselves. But they do it today in all the skeet shooting tournaments and events like that. And fishing derbies. There's like
backgammon tournaments have it.
It's all legal. You can do it, and the state has signed off on Calcutta wagering is legal and not considered gambling per se in the state of Nevada.
But it's funny with a group. You have 100 gamblers in a room. You don't get as much action on the Calcutta as you would think.
Or as you should, because everybody that comes in the door throws in 20 to add to the pool. So we start off with an extra up to $2,000 extra overlay every time.
Yeah, so there's positive EV, but so you would think there'd be a lot more bidding.
I can tell you during that, I sat in the back this time for the first time. Usually I sit closer to the front, and I just couldn't get a seat. And I watched what went on. And people are talking. They don't, there's all this gambling going on. There's the bidding and it's kind of fun to a degree, but the people in the back are more, they're more talking. It's such a social event that they're not necessarily wagering. I mean, a couple people said, "Is it over?" I mean, maybe they had intended to, and then, it was already passed.
Well, interesting phenomenon. Last year, Don was kind enough to bring in one of the top DJs from the Strip who brought in just this phenomenal equipment and was going to play all of his cool stuff while we're having the party. And I said, don't do that. Why not? People are here to talk. It's like a high school reunion. The worst thing you can do at a high school reunion is have a live band. People don't want to listen to a band. They want to talk. And it's the same way at the Blackjack Ball.
But he did bring that light show thing, which was really cool.
The lights were cool. But I like having the one event where, like my daughter singing along with Daryl Purpose. Daryl is a world-class blackjack player, and was named National Songwriter of the Year one year for folk singing. And my daughter's a player, and she's a professional playwright and citizen of Dublin, or citizen of Ireland now, but she can really sing and really play. And so we do one song. And they played one song, and it was nice. Great way to start the night off, talk a little bit, and away we go.
Talking about, you were asking about favorite memories. For me, it was meeting the Four Horsemen, the guys who first calculated basic strategy, to have them all there at the same time before they died. That and meeting Ed Thorpe the first time, that to me was just really, really a highlight.
It's interesting. I put down my favorite, my remembrance, and I put meeting Thorpe and the Four Horsemen. The same thing you say, but I've got one. I got one too. This is another Max Rubin, his spontaneity in action. This might have been a little over a decade ago. And at that time, the party's evolved over the years, and things that were good have stayed and things that weren't good aren't. And so one of the things that wasn't good, I guess, was people would go up and talk about a little bit about the people who are up for induction before the vote. And one time, Arnold Snyder, who is one of the greatest, absolutely, for my money, maybe the best gambling writer in the world. I mean, he's terrific with words. He's excellent. He came completely prepared, and he's talking about all of the inductees. And Arnold went on and on and on and on, and people were looking around, and Arnold it was interesting, but to a point. Finally, it just seemed interminable. Finally, Arnold was done. He walked off, and by accident, he knocked over the microphone stand. And Max walked up and picked up the microphone stand and looked at the audience and said, "Even the microphone fell asleep." Still one of the best off-the-cuff lines I've ever heard in my life. Even the microphone fell asleep.
What was so funny, the whole stand didn't fall over, but the mic itself just went boink and was hanging upside down like it had just... I said, okay, sorry, Arnold. And we haven't had that since. And if you noticed, everybody that comes to the ball, now I send out a bio on all the people that are up for the Hall of Fame, so we don't have to talk about them at the party, which is interesting. And we're going to hopefully recast and relook at some new people this year, I would hope. And I'm going to get some more help.
He's still talking about he's going to keep doing the party.
I'm going to. I might be.
He's going to participate, but you get to be the bad guy, Richard.
Everybody gets a stale cracker and a
the
glass of water.
honorary chairman, and we'll have a board that does a lot of this and decides who gets to come and who doesn't. Because there were a lot of people that were really upset they didn't get to come this year, but
I'm sure.
Well, the building only seats a certain number.
I have 112 seats. I can't make more.
Yeah.
And they're not free either. People kind of forget that.
Yeah.
Well,
actually, I thought Ed Thorpe had, he mentioned he thought you should just charge everybody $100 a head, and that would weed out.
It was interesting. He sent me an email and said, as an econometrician, and he starts Ed Talk, and he said didn't say you're being stupid, but compared to him, I'm being stupid. And he said
Compared
that,
to him, you are stupid.
I am stupid, yes. Well, when I walk into the room at the Blackjack Ball, the cumulative IQ drops about 10 points, just me being there. But Ed sent me an email and said, according to economic theory, you're making a grave error here because there's a high demand and it's free. They bring a bottle of champagne. You should be charging at least $100, and I'll write the letter for you, and you include it with your invitation and say, Dr. Thorpe says you have to pay $100 to get in the door.
Plus the bottle of champagne.
Plus the bottle of champagne. And we would take 20 from that for the Calcutta seed, and that would just about break us even at $80 a head. And it made sense. It would be interesting to do because I know there are people that would stop coming because of the $80, and they might be down to their last $8 million, but they will not spend $80. You know who they are, too.
One of the nice things about the Calcutta is Max is the MC, and he usually finds a way to insult the people in the audience. One example, it happened this year, but this year it happened to Richard, but it's happened to other people. Richard bid $350 for somebody. Might have been me. It's a bad bet, but he did. And before anybody else could speak, Richard bid $400. And Max let him have it about bidding against himself. And, of course, it happens every year. Somebody does it. But
well, one year, the great writer, and he's been around a long time, Henry Tambourine, bet against himself 3 times in a row.
yes, he did.
Said 200, make it 3. No, I'm going 4. And I'm just laughing. I said, Henry, you're unclear on the concept here, buddy. You're supposed to be gambling against those guys. It's an auction. Get it? And he still lost. Didn't get the guy. But
Now,
it's
Don,
still pretty fun.
do you have another favorite story?
Not one that I can tell on the air.
Wait, that happened at the ball?
I have a fun one with Don last year
Okay.
because he lost by one
One vote. yeah.
vote of being in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. And I did a long speech about famous and how Ken Houston was one of the original inductees. And there were a lot of people did not like Ken Houston, but he was the most famous blackjack player. And I talked about how Don was the most famous blackjack player. And obviously, as a Hall of Fame, just because of that, he should be in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. So I started reading the number of votes, did the tally. It got down to the last 2, and I said, and the last 2 are these. And, of course, Don Johnson, being the most famous, came in second. I announced who the winner was, and it was Bill Bitter. Don's giving me this look like, oh.
I'm like, thanks, Max.
Yeah.
Then this year, he had the bottle engraved, and I had that one, and people are just begging me to exit out and if he didn't get the votes. But he made sure he won, and he should have won this year, too.
And Bill Benter is a worthy inductee in the Hall of Fame, without a doubt.
By any measure.
There were times in the past where if Bill and Benter and Don Johnson wanted to buy up the field, buy up everybody, they could. They could outbid anybody else for anybody running. And so,
In other words, just buy the entire Calcutta and scrape off the 2,000 that's already
Right.
in there, right?
Oh, and they mentioned that, too. And I said, no, you can't. I said, we're going to take it. And then I'm going to say, okay, I'm taking that plus $1, whatever it was, and I'll take them. Thank you. Party's over. Okay, let's play. No, they don't get to do that, and they wouldn't do that, but it has occurred to the smarter people in
Well,
the
to
room.
everybody, we're all gamblers, right?
Right.
So everybody realizes, well, there's $2,000 extra just there in the Calcutta.
Yeah.
You know.
But
Yeah.
I won't let that happen, so it's not going to happen. But
if you were merely the host emeritus, you could still stop it.
I would stop it.
Yeah. Anybody else have any?
How many years is the field didn't win this year, but in previous years the field usually wins the Calcutta.
The field usually is pretty close. It's probably about 50-50. I'd say the field is close to 10 times.
Well, I don't. Are you talking about first place? Because
First
I mean,
place.
there's 4 places of money, so the field is in the money
Most years.
almost every year.
Almost every
Yeah.
year. But as far as winning, and after they've won once, they move into another category with 3 winners bunched together, or whatever it may happen to be, or the Washington winners, or whatever that is. But yeah, we've had a lot of people come out of nowhere and win the thing, and one woman won one time.
Yeah, well, back in the old days, it was different because when you had when Munchkin was playing and Grosjean were playing, these guys were really money. I mean, there was no doubt. They always would get bought ahead of the field. They would always do better than the field. When they were gone, it was more diluted, and it was almost like anybody could win. And there were a lot of new players were coming to the ball. I think recently now, the infusion of new players has been less and less, and people who are getting known, who have done well in prior years, are getting put into categories. So the field, I looked at it this year and I said the field is really diluted, and it went for so much compared to everybody else. I think that was a miscalculation on those who were betting on the field this year.
It went something like 5,000, where there was only 14,000 to start with in the whole thing, and 2,000 was off the bat. So
Yeah.
It was a miscommunication. I was part of buying the field this year.
Were you?
And yeah, well,
But there were some great players out there. But one of the problems with Munchkin and James and a number of people that are there is they don't drink.
Oh, I do.
And when you, well, a little.
I have
now,
a glass of wine
But when
or
you
whatever,
have
but yeah, I don't get
competitions that
hammered.
involve structuring a hand and memorizing cards and doing certain things, and one guy has already drank his bottle of Dom and half of his date's bottle of Dom, and he's sitting at the table against James that hasn't had a drop.
he doesn't drink at all,
And
ever.
no, he's never had one in his life, and he's smarter than anybody else in the room to start with.
and he probably practiced before the ball as well.
Whatever he does, he's gets red. Yes, whatever it is, and so that makes it tough, and that's why he won. That's why Munchkin won so often. So at least we got him out of the field, got him off the table, got him off the board, and so we've had a lot of different
I
winners
think we
since.
should get back in, but have some kind of maybe not just for us, but for everybody. Like for every time you've won, you get -1 on the test or something like that. You know.
That's still not going to keep you out.
or more, yeah, or 2 off or something, because maybe you could do some. You could have some sort of handicapping system, but it can't be too complicated, or then it just it loses everything. You know, it's got to be really simple, because this is a complicated party.
You
Yeah.
really changed your tune since we started giving these Nebuchadnezzars of champagne away.
He wants
Hey,
back
you know,
in.
it's
He sees the advantage play.
yeah. I just think it's a really cool bottle. That's why I was telling Anthony you should put it down in the lobby of Huntington Press. You know, just have it down there so that when people come in to buy books or whatever, they can see the trophy. You know?
After it's empty.
Yeah, after it's empty, and not to say like, "Oh, I'm so smart," just to say, "Here's a even if it didn't belong to you, even if it was,
I'll send the one with a snapped off neck over.
Yeah, it is cool. It's a cool trophy, and it is something that we will display. I mean, just for that reason, certainly I want to drink it. I want to drink the stuff in it. You know, I mean, that's just part of the fun, I reckon. But it's cool. I mean, what did you get? You got one of those little league trophies, right? See, there's no incentive back then. You know, now you're going to give me 20 bottles of champagne.
Better than
Yeah,
a
I'm gonna
little
try.
league trophy, but yeah, it's not quite a participation ribbon, but they were nice enough trophies. But that's all courtesy and came through Don, who's been a representative for Ace of Spades Champagne, and then this Luke Belair, and he does a great job getting them out there in the public's eye. And because of the things he has done with these brands, they've all of a sudden become big brands. And the value of that champagne triples, quadruples. It's worth, what, Ace of Spades is probably worth 10 times what it used to sell
Sovereign
for.
Brands have done a terrific job in creating these brands. I'd like to think that I had a lot to do with helping with the Ace of Spades brand and making it as popular as it was. So much so that Ace of Spades was sold. The Ace of Spades label was sold out from Sovereign Brands to Jay-Z and Beyonce, to their company. And now Sovereign Brands still owns the Luke Belair brands.
Too bad we couldn't get Jay-Z and Beyonce to show up and
To crash.
crash the party. Yeah.
In the article that I wrote this week, I accused you of providing the champagne as a way of stuffing the ballot box. So now, if that was true, now that you have won the competition,
it's called campaigning.
well, good. So the campaign is over. Would we expect these Nebuchadnezzars next year?
We want to go to a Midas. We want
A
to
Midas.
go to a 30-liter.
A 30-liter.
That there,
Never even heard of them.
I didn't even. So there's a bigger size.
There's a
than,
bigger size.
Jesus, is that the
Wow.
biggest
That's
Midas?
the biggest is a 30-liter.
Midas.
I guess I'll be back next year.
Well, Richard, if you're hosting, that might be a reason
Maybe-
for you to
maybe
host
I'll
the
come in
ball.
with a new ID, right?
Well,
go.
if you're in charge, you can make the rules about what handicap you and James have to have.
I'd love to know how this started. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me to tell me they heard I was now doing the ball starting next year.
We
So-
thank you very much, Richard. It's really a lot of fun to have it
I
with them.
think it's probably because I lay off everything on this mystical attendance committee that makes all these horrible decisions, and it's really out of my hands, and it just goes before them, and it's people that have won the Blackjack Ball and can't play anymore, so they have no interest in that, and so there are a couple people there and some other people from the Blackjack Hall of Fame, and that is the committee. And when they make a decision, the decision is theirs. So
So you're saying
Don't
they
blame
made
me.
the decision
They.
that I'm now in charge
you're,
of this?
you're they. You are they. You
I-
and James, among a few others.
I love the. I start getting the phone calls. I love the conspiracy theories. They didn't get an invite to the ball this year. They blame it on something. It must be that shady stuff that happened 20 years ago. That Max never forgets.
Were that were true. All right. We've been having a good time reminiscing about the Blackjack Ball. We've had Don Johnson, Anthony Curtis, Max Rubin. Thank all of you. Thank you, Richard. And we really appreciate you holding the Blackjack Ball next year. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.